First one, I think one of the most important contributions in your writings that we're kind of discussing here is the your attempt to provide a materialist analysis of the divisions in the American working class, which are not culturalist ones, but are premised on an understanding of a material politics that is going on, which is premised on economic interest, but not class interest. And I think this is something which is worth elaborating on. So,
Mhm.
if you could walk us through, firstly, your understanding of those divisions and the fracturing of the American working class, and secondly, or maybe in tandem with that, explain the difference between economic and class interest, because I think in a lot of left discussions, these two things get elided as if it's the same thing, and it gets elided. If I can make this comment, elided in a way from both sides. So there's an assumption that all material politics are ipso facto class politics, and if something is not a class politics, such as identity politics, that it is therefore not material at all, that there's no material grounding, that it's purely ideological or cultural. And in fact, you sustain that there can be economic politics, materialist politics, which are not class politics.
No, thanks for asking that question. So let me just take let me talk about what I understand as class in a general sense, and then talk about this other sort of issue. So if you're thinking about class in a Marxian sense, it's a very sparse model, and I think the sparseness of the model should be held on to, because once you start futzing with it, it becomes very unclear very quickly. But the basic idea is that classes form around the ownership and non-ownership of the major productive assets in society, right? And so, as applied to a society like the U.S., what that means is, about 60 to 70% of the population is subsisting on wage income. And then then you have a few people who have their own businesses, and then you have a small group of people who are basically the owners of the major productive assets of the society. And so the class division is really between those two things, right? And so class interests are the interests that derive from the ownership or non-ownership of those productive assets, or what we say, the ownership or non-ownership of property. But there's a lot of interests that people have that are material interests that are orthogonal in a sense to those interests. And most clearly are all of those interests that derive not from ownership or non-ownership of productive property per se, but of the particular positions that people hold in markets. And of course, that's Weber's territory, right? So you could say, this is where his insights are actually incredibly relevant, right? And the observation there, of course, with respect to, the observation is both with respect to capital and with respect to labor, but with respect to the working class itself, the observation is that people bring slightly different qualities of labor power to a labor market, and they engage in all kinds of strategies of defense and closure, what you call closure, to protect the price of their labor power. Unionism, we could say, is one of those, but there are many. There's racial and ethnic closure. There are forms of credentialing. There are many, many forms that workers engage in to defend the value of the asset that they bring to a market. Those interests are highly material, but they are not really, in the relevant sense, class interests, right?